Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of Social Media News Live. This is going to be oh my gosh, a crazy episode. We've already had a lot of fun in the green room. I know you're not supposed to talk about the green room. That's what our pal
What
Dave
happens
Jackson
in the
says.
green room,
I know.
Jeff?
Shouldn't be said, but anyway, this is going to be a fun show. We've got our friend Chris Stone here in the hot seat today, and it's going to be a lot of fun talking about podcasting. He had this term called unseen advantage, and I'm like, let's talk about that. And we made a fun thumbnail. You happen to see that in the YouTubes and the socials and the newsletter. So, by the way, if you aren't subscribed to the newsletter, you need to go and subscribe. It's at jeffc.com/news. Some of the best things I think I've been putting out lately is that newsletter, along with this show, of course, but I talk about that in the newsletter. So anyway, we've got our friends already popping up. We've got, let's see, our friend Jim Fuse in the audience says, good morning, good to see all my Google front. Don't say Google Plus. He'll be drunk and we won't get the good stuff out of him. He's going to have to take a drink every time.
Cheers,
we
Jim
say
Fuse.
that. So this is going to be a fun show. Make sure you guys, if you guys know people who are like podcasters or they're wanting to start a podcast or maybe they're wanting to transition to a video podcast, well, that's what we're going to be talking about today. So make sure you call them in down below in the comments, wherever you're watching from. We would love to bring up your comments and ask your questions to a podcasting expert, which is Chris Stone. So we've got our friend Ask Ralph saying, I think that Chris is one of the most animated podcast insiders I have ever seen. Nice. He's like a cartoon character, a Pixar cartoon character. Yes. Thanks, Ralph, for that. And Doug says, good morning in layman's terms. It's good to see you, Doug. Thank you for popping by over on LinkedIn. And then our friend, the amazing Gary Stockton, saying, happy Friday, gentlemen. Gary, I've been checking out your TikTok. You are killing it over there, my friend. You are just putting out content like crazy. He is very, very good. So very, very cool. And then we got Video Like a Dad saying, hey, friends, howdy from Dallas. Well, you know what? I have Video Like a Dad, not very far from me. I'm from Longview, so about 2.5 hours east, depending on what part of Dallas. So good to see you here. And then our friend Rich Watts saying, good morning, gents. Let's learn. Okay, this is going to be good because I know that Rich is interested in all this stuff. He's just set up his studio. And so this is going to be great. Rich, thank you for popping by. All right. Connor Brown, how are you doing today, my friend? How's Florida?
I'm great. You know, as of yesterday, pumpkin spice is in the rotation. Gosh. And I couldn't think of how to celebrate better than with the two biggest pumpkin spice aficionados, Chris Stone and C. You guys are chipper. You're looking pumpkin. You're looking basic. I love it.
That pumpkin is not a spice.
I put a little here and I put a little here, right? A little pumpkin spice here. You know, I just want to attract the right people in the fall season. You know,
pumpkin is not a spice. It is a way of life. I couldn't agree.
Oh my gosh. Turn in your man card. Anyway, Megan Power says, hi, guys. Good to see you here, Megan. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, quit messing around, and get into it. I'm going to go ahead and hit go on the podcast machine. Are you good to go, my friend Connor?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Hello, folks. Welcome to Social Media News Live. I'm Jeff C., and you're not.
And I'm Connor Brown, and this is the show that keeps you up to date on what's happening in the world of social media and more.
Have you ever wondered how you can truly set yourself apart in a crowded content world? Or maybe you're curious about hidden advantages seasoned podcasters have. Or maybe you're looking to elevate your podcast or live stream to a new level of your business. If those questions hit home, then you're in for something special this week. We're excited to bring on a guest who's mastered the art of storytelling through podcasting, editing, and live streaming. Chris Stone has helped countless creators elevate their shows, and today he's sharing his story, his insights, and his top tips for standing out. So sit back, clear your schedule, clear your mind, and get ready for this week's episode of Social Media News Live. Chris Stone, my friend, how are you doing today?
Jeff, it is an honor to be here on screen because you know I'm such a huge fan of the show. I would be in the chat right now, hanging out, saying hello to Renee and Megan and Rich and everybody else that's in here. So thank you. It's an honor to be on the best show in the interwebs. And you know I mean that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. You are a big supporter of the show. Oh, this is going to be fun.
I know if you don't, Chris is a ultimate warrior of the chat. He shows up every single week. But if you don't know Chris outside of the chat, you should. because Chris Stone is the founder of Cast Ahead. He's a seasoned podcast and live streaming consultant with over 28 years of experience in the music industry, including a successful tenure at Sony Music. At Cast Ahead, Chris is dedicated to helping motivated entrepreneurs and businesses integrate podcasting and live streaming into their strategies and ultimately attracting more listeners, viewers, and customers. Chris is also a co-host of Dealcasters on Amazon Live, where he and Jim Fuse, who's also here in the chat today, empower content creators to overcome the fear of technology and thrive in the digital space. Chris, thanks again for being here.
The unsinkable Connor Brown. I have to ask you, where did the unsinkable come from? This is everyone in the chat
cuts.
wants to know right now. Where does the
No
unsinkable?
idea. No idea.
Does it have something to do with a floaty or something you can't mention here on the live?
Here's the reason. It's actually a historical reference. One, Connor goes on Disney cruises all the time, and so it makes sense. But there is the unsinkable Molly Brown, who actually survived the Titanic, and I think she survived a couple other major cruise liner disasters. I think she was played in the Titanic by Kathy Bates. I think that's her character. And so I got the unsinkable Connor Brown from the unsinkable Molly Brown. So there you go.
No relation to
that you know of.
And it
has kept me up at night.
I'm telling you.
Connor.
It's ironic because I don't actually know how to swim. So it's tough.
Are you kidding me? You don't know how to swim?
No, I do.
Okay, I was just like, what? Jeez. All right. So anyway, by the way, I want to just get this out of the way really, really quickly. I want to make sure you guys check out Chris Stone's new website. It's brand spanking new. It looks really great. He's got all his stuff on there. Castahead.net. It's really, really cool. So go check it out, castahead.net. He's got all his services, all the stuff he does, great testimonials, some of his amazing editing, which we're going to talk about today. So castahead.net, go ahead and check that out. But you know who else has got a great website? It's our friends over at Ecamm. That's right, the sponsors of the show. You can find out more about them at ecamm.com/Jeff. If you use code Jeff15, you'll save 15% on your first purchase. They just have this really cool integration with Zoom. I love it. It saved my bacon. I didn't have to use it with Chris because he knows what he's doing. He could just dial in over a dial-up modem and he'd be fine. But no, if it's right, a little static going on. But if you had any trouble, if you have trouble with guests who maybe aren't familiar with how to log on, if you're doing a lot of new people who are getting into live streaming, Zoom is a great way for them. And now Ecamm integrates with it really, really easy. So make sure to check that out. All right. Talking about podcast unseen advantage, this is going to be fun because when you said this, Chris, I was like, okay, this is really good because it makes sense. So we're first going to be talking about one of the things that you really do with all the content you put out. You set yourself apart. You stand out. I mean, you and I chat a lot, in the Messenger or whatever. And one of the things that you talk about is standing out and the way you edit actually gives you business. So I want to talk about some of your specific strategies that you use to set yourself apart as a content creator because, there's all this AI content vomit. AI is great. I love it as a tool. But when you're creating content, how can you set yourself apart? So tell us your secrets.
Yeah, I first want to give a disclaimer that a lot of people, when they hear me talk about AI, they think I'm some sort of anti-AI person, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I love it. Much like you, Jeff, I like to pull, I'm an AppSumo addict, and I have a ton of software that I'll just, give a go and use it as much as possible because we're curious people, and a lot of creators, a lot of the folks here that are in the chat, Tech Troublemaker, Dustin Stout, all these people are very curious people, and it's why they've transcended themselves and are the creators that they are. But I think where we stand right now in this whole realm is people are using this AI mostly as an easy button, and they're taking all of their content and they're putting it in these things. And whereas 3 months ago, they didn't have any shorts or reels or blog posts, or, they didn't have really a presence on LinkedIn. Now they have a ton of content that's showing up. And of course they're using AI. I'm using it as well. But it's an opportunity for us to set ourselves apart from what everyone else is doing. Now is the time to do that. And there's great software that allows you to give you a sort of a head start and be able to say, okay, it used to be a pain in the arse to do show notes for my
Right.
podcast. It
Right.
used to be a pain to just get, people hate video editing. I love it. Okay. But they hate doing it. It takes way too much time. But I have this program where if I take my hour-long episode and all I got to do is paste in a YouTube link, and then look, I've got 15 reels, and it even ranks them for me on some algorithm that somebody came up with that says, hey, here's the one that's going to hit the most with your audience. And it just is creating this pile of mediocrity that everyone else is doing, where I'm making the choice to say, okay, I can use these things, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to try my best to do it in my own voice. And that means sometimes I have to recreate that. Sometimes I'll use this software to say, hey, this actually was an excerpt that I didn't really think about, but it makes great sense for me to use. I'm going to pull that episode in and create my own edit from that and put it in my own voice and do some of the things that I think would make more sense. And yes, that takes time. But I would rather take the time and have it be more effective for the audience and the people that I serve and the clients that I serve than to just add to this pile that's happening. And I know we're going to get into a lot of the other stuff as it relates to podcasting more specifically and what advantages that you do have and by utilizing this AI. But I think from a mindset perspective, Jeff and Connor, I think when I put something into AI and I say, okay, I right now my mind's a blank page and I know I need to be doing something with this, and I put it in there and it gives me something. I look at it initially and say, someone else did this. And I think if we look at that and we go, okay, someone else did this, now it's time for me to take this and go, okay, I like this. I like the framework. I don't like this. And I probably would tell a story around it. Because sometimes people, they just need a little bit of a head start. They just need early on when Lately came in the game, and Lately AI is just a great piece of software, and I love the people there. But they said this, and this was 6 years ago when AI was just a gleam in a lot of people's eyes. They would say, our software will take you to second or third base. It's your job to take it home as a human.
Right.
And so insert yourself in this call it the human loop or whatever you want to call it, and take it home with your voice. And there was tools within that software to kind of like use what is your voice and be able to see what is hitting for you and your audience instead of just throwing stuff over the fence and hoping it hits.
Yeah. I love that. I think it's so important that AI needs to be something that helps us be creative, not replaces our creativity. I love that point that you made, Chris, about how everyone's doing the same thing, right? They're uploading it to something that's producing shorts. And what does that do? It just has a lot of the same content on Instagram, on TikTok, because the one tool is creating it all. And it's removing our own authenticity, our own voice, everything that makes us, and we can't stand out in the crowd. And I think that might be one big mistake that people make when it comes to adding in AI to their workflow. They just see everyone doing something, so they say, well, if everyone's doing it, I might as well do it. And then they just become a face in the crowd and they don't stand out anywhere. So what are some other common mistakes that you've been seeing lately when it comes to content creators integrating AI into their workflow? And what are some things where you're just like, why are you doing that? Why is it that way?
Yeah, I'm not trying to call out, any specific software or whatnot, but I mean, I just want to say, Alex Hormozy's been taken. Okay, everyone, stop using his fonts.
Right.
Stop putting captions on over people's eyeballs, because you're not going to connect with anybody that way. And I think that it just you have a voice, you have an audience you serve. If you stay hyper focused on the people you serve, you won't do half the things you do. And you have to understand, like, how am I going to solve this person's problem? And if I'm just doing it what everyone else is doing, are you really hitting them? Are these algorithms really selecting your content to be put in front of your key audience? And a lot of the clients that I serve at Cast Ahead, in the productions that I do and the podcasts that I put out and their content, are sales trainers, and they say this all of the time. Everything out there right now, our products and our services are all the same. A lot of what we're saying is no different. There's probably someone on this earth that looks like me, Steve Zahn, on a podcast somewhere and is talking about AI and video somewhere. I'm not saying anything ridiculous. The only difference between what I'm saying and what this other person is saying is me. I'm the difference. And AI is fantastic. ChatGPT is fantastic. It is a great way for you to help, but you have to be you. And it's the only difference that it from your blog post and someone else's blog post about the same thing that you're doing.
Yeah. One of the things, and I want to, there's some great comments we've got from our amazing people in our audience, is Dustin, who has a great AI tool called Magi. So he knows what he's talking about. He is deep in the AI world, and he goes, AI is a supplement and requires a human to work. The more skilled the human, the better the AI output. Like, I totally agree, Dustin. I think I see it as a way that as storytellers, it enhances what we can do as a tool. One of the things, and you kind of alluded to it, Chris, is that blank page syndrome where people get and they're like, okay, I just sit in front of this. Okay, what am I going to write? What script am I going to do? I think AI can help jumpstart it. The other thing is zigging while everybody's zagging. While everyone else is putting copy and pasting what they're getting in Cast Magic or ChatGPT or whatever, taking the time to make it yours automatically makes you stand out. Like for my newsletter, I mentioned that before, I quit using AI completely on it. It's all me. In fact, I use you as a quote saying that I could tell that this is not AI just from the wackadoo things you're saying in there. And I think that's what we need to do as creators. Okay, if everybody's doing Alex Hormozy or doing Cast Magic, copy and paste, what can we do different to stand out? And I think that's really, really important as creators. And then Ralph says this, he goes, the problem is most people are lazy and will take the easier path. Content creation is hard, time-consuming, and difficult work. Tools can help you, but it's the you that makes the difference. So, and Ralph knows he's putting out like a daily podcast, which is
you got
bonkers.
Smart people in your chat.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Totally smart people. Yeah, it's you have to underline it. But here's the fact of the matter, right? The fact of the matter is most people won't do the work that's necessary to be successful. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if it's AI, doesn't matter if it's video editing, doesn't matter if it's podcasting. Most people won't do the work that's necessary to be successful. And we can be successful if we make the effort to do the work and stand apart and be excellent. And it feels like I'm standing up here preaching a little bit, but and speaking of preaching, our friend Kirk Nugent says this all the time: success leaves clues. Yeah. But I'm going to underline that, and I'm going to say that doesn't mean you should make a Xerox copy of someone else's success. It leaves clues, but you have to jump on your own boat and set sail. Mm-hmm. Like go. Like you can't go, okay, well this works and this works and this works. Take those clues, the tools of the Titans, Tim Ferriss, and all these things. These are great things to help inspire you, but it has to be you. Yeah. And so anyway, I'm going to step down from my pulpit, and we're going to have an altar call for Ask Ralph at the end.
Everyone wants to be
Pass the plate.
The noun without doing the verb, right? Yeah. We want to be the creative without being creative.
Yeah, and our pal Jim Fuse says, if you overuse AI, you stop thinking. Even training AI to be you can change your point of view, and AI doesn't bring those changes in. Yeah, that's a great point. And I want to bring back up James Hicks's comment. He
Dr.
goes,
Hicks. Oh, let me sit up straight here.
Yeah, he's coming on the show in a couple of weeks, so I'm really excited about that. Chris bobs while everyone else weaves. So you're one creator, especially with your clips and your shorts, that I think elevated you to the forefront and got clients, and people saw that you did what you did and they want it for their brand. And so you were able to kind of use those skills that you have to attract clients. So you're an example, but do you have any other examples of creators or brands like effectively using AI kind of to set themselves apart from the market, but still retaining who they are and not letting it just, I'm just spitting out stuff?
Well, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, and I'm not just saying that because I'm on your show, Jeff, but you were on Dealcasters last year, and we talked about, of course, we talk about AI. It's what everybody wants to talk about, and that's fine. I'm comfortable having those conversations. And you said this. You said, "I think AI will make us better storytellers," and then you told a story. And I was like, it was one of the few times on Dealcasters where I was like, it kind of knocked me off of my rhythm a little bit. You know how you get into podcasting
Right.
as a host and you're like, okay, next question. Okay, we got to get to this. Okay, somebody's in the chat and you're doing all that. And of course I'm doing that, but you said that and it kind of knocked me a little bit. And it in a good way. This is one of the best parts of podcasting is you get to learn, you get free consultation, all of the time. And it hit me. And it was like, yes, why? Like, ask ChatGPT for a story, and you're probably not going to get it. Even if you can, create these AI agents and all these other things that supposedly are in your voice, it's not there yet. And again, we still have that advantage of doing it. And Jeff, I think you do a fantastic job of
Thank you.
doing this. You go live, and so that's a huge advantage because as of right now, I mean, who's going to trust an AI live
Bearded man,
model,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so I think there's that. Your email newsletter is it's one of the few that I actually read, and because I know and I can trust it. And I know your sense of humor, and I know I get value out of it, right? And it's quick, and it's okay, and I get what's happening, and then maybe I sign up for Ecamm, whatever.
Right.
So it's that's a good example. James Hicks, who's in the chat right now, we've talked about AI video software. And James Hicks does a fantastic job. You guys need to go to Hicks New Media and James Hicks and check out what he's doing, especially when it comes to short form video, because he's taking some of these softwares that are creating, using AI to create videos, and then he's going in as a human, and it looks and sounds like what James would do. Now, I know he's using, because he and I share our tools. And so I know that he's using maybe 3 or 4 different things, but he's inserting himself because he has a laser focus on his audience. He has a laser focus on who he's trying to serve. And he knows if he throws something up there that just doesn't look or sound like him, he loses people. And he'll lose the new people that might see that he wants to be a part of his community. And I think those are 2 examples as creators we need to kind of look at and go, yeah, it's a long game. Ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to wake up and have millions of subscribers on any platform. This is a long game. It's hard work, and it's something that is not for everyone. And so I would just say, listen, if you want to take shortcuts, cool. But the shortcut life is may get you a couple of views here and there, but it's not going to resonate with people for the long game.
That's a great point. I want to go back to talk about really quick what you said about me being on your show, talking about it's going to be a storytelling and a tool. And one of the, I'll just give an example for the last email that went out today, promoting the show. I sat there and had a conversation with ChatGPT because I was like, okay, we're talking about unseen podcasting. And so I use that feature where you can just talk to it and it'll talk back. And I said, give me some stories about something that's underneath and that's unseen, but it's right there where you just don't notice it. And so we had this conversation back and forth, and it gave me some stories. None of them worked. But it got my brain thinking. And then I was like, oh, I remember that movie, The Edge, with Alec Baldwin and Anthony Hopkins. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that'll be a great intro to this. So using these tools to brainstorm and to dream and get ideas, that's what I think is amazing as creators, is we have this spark, like this brainstorming session we can use. We even do it with visuals. Like if you looked at the thumbnail for today, that was like, okay, how can I get Chris to do this? Yeah, exactly. I had stuff over my eyes.
All you had to do was ask. I would have taken a
I know. I was trying to get it a little subtly. But anyway, those kind of things, that's what I think I'm so excited about AI, is that storytelling aspect and making us better and like, kind of doing that spark to ignite the gasoline of creativity in our minds. So that's what I wanted to bring up. So Connor, go ahead.
I think also that AI, like, it's always going to, at least now, err on the side of like good, right? And what I mean by that is not embarrassing. I like to go back to this all the time. I love reading Jeff's stories when he talks about pooping his pants after eating a bean and cheese burrito contest at Taco Bell, right? Because it's hilarious and it's something that would
And it's
absolutely
very
happen.
true. Yeah.
And it's true,
I know.
right? But with AI, it always seems like he conquered the summit because he's the greatest of all time. And it's so,
Right.
yes, 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 yes. And
He
that's not real.
leveraged the game changer, right?
There's no authenticity to it.
Right.
So using it to jog your memory to go back to an Alec Baldwin and Sir Anthony Hopkins movie from, almost 30 years
1997. Yeah.
ago, right? So I think that that's the real power in all of that, which is great.
Agree.
I know one big thing, transitioning from audio to video, and this is where this unseen advantage kind of comes into play for people that for so long wanted to or have been podcasting with only one sense. Now all of a sudden everyone's saying, hey, you got to get into video for X, Y, and Z reasons, because you can connect better with people, because it can help with marketing, because you can grow your podcast more. And I think a lot of people still find it incredibly daunting, even though they've done 50% of it, the audio version, for so long, because it's so much more than, okay, well, now I gotta do my hair, I gotta put on a shirt, no more podcasting in my pajamas, right? I'm recording myself, so it's that visual sense. But Chris, you talk about how there's so much that you can take from your experience doing audio only, and you're really so far ahead of the game when it comes to transitioning to video podcasting as well. So how can these established audio podcasters take that experience that they already know and smoothly kind of transition into a video podcast if they want that?
Yeah, I'm not sure when it clicked. I started having a lot more conversations with sort of successful podcasters from an audio perspective. So at some point, late last year, and there's struggles that they're talking about are things like maybe imposter syndrome adjacent, like, okay, or I have fear of camera, or I'm not sure what I should be doing from a tech perspective, or things like this. These are things that people that have hundreds of podcast episodes are talking to me about. And I paused and I said, let me look at it, give me some general ideas of how many people you think listen to your podcast on a daily basis, and looking at your data. Okay, great. And you've been doing your podcast for 4 years. Okay, awesome. This is great. The audio podcast. Why are you treating this any differently?
Yeah.
You have an actual, so there's tons of people that are launching podcasts, and we know what pod fade is. After 6 episodes, you quit, right? What they're doing is they're launching video and audio either at the same time, or sometimes just video, which, we're not going to get on the whether or not it's a podcast thing or whether it's just a video that sits on YouTube. That's for another conversation. But generally, the public will decide what's podcasts. Okay, that's where and if you want to fight me on that, that's cool. Just jump in the chat. We can have conversation there. But the bottom line is that you, as an audio podcaster, have 4 years of an experience of doing the very same thing that you could be doing already on video. And you've gone through all of this, let's call it training, to attract an audience that you already have. Mm-hmm. You already have 4 years of experience and have built a community. And yes, it's audio only. But if you think your audio only listeners are only listening to audio podcasts and not watching them on YouTube, you're wrong. You're absolutely wrong. They are going to YouTube. They're watching content. It may not be, 2-hour-long podcasts from whomever, but they're consuming more content than just your podcast. Okay. And so now you've got, let's say, thousands of listeners for your audio podcast. Why not create content that's expected in that video platform for those people but also for other people to find you and go over to your audio podcast. Dave Jackson and I call this the Conan O'Brien effect, where is if anybody is a fan of Conan O'Brien's podcast, I am a massive fan of Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend.
Yeah.
And so if you go and search on YouTube for the Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend podcast, you will not get the full episode. You have to go and listen to it either on SiriusXM, because he has a huge deal with SiriusXM, or it's available on all audio podcast players as well. And so, of course, I've watched clips from, various guests on his episode. And then, he shows up in my YouTube algorithm and I see a clip of him interviewing the Beastie Boys. And I'm like, cool. So what do? I'm watching a couple of, episodes, but they're 8 minutes, 6 minutes, 15 minutes, or whatever. And so what happens? I go over to my audio podcast and I mark it to listen to. And what happens is not only did I consume 3 clips worth, I listened to the entire podcast, which included the very same content that was on YouTube, because they've created content for someone that opens up YouTube. Their expectation for that content is different than when they open up an audio podcast player. But that doesn't mean that they don't go to YouTube if they listen to audio podcasts. You can create content that's appropriate for YouTube. But just understand that if you plop your 1.5 hour conversation with Chris Stone on Social Media News Live over there, it may not get as much action as your audio podcast. It may not, but you have an opportunity to go, hey, I have this conversation where Chris talks about AI, and I can take this and I can put it into YouTube, and then I can title it differently, put a different thumbnail on it, put different timestamps on it, and serve somebody specifically with that content, as opposed to hoping that they're going to find an 1.5 hour long episode. These podcasters who have been doing audio podcasts for years understand their audience. They understand their problems. They understand the content that's going to serve and solve those problems. They have a community of people. And when someone's starting just on video, they don't have any of those. And that's the most important thing you need for any podcast, audio or video.
That's great. Yeah. So I want to unpack that a little bit. I've just noted, and this is, Ralph got me thinking about this. He goes, I'm finding after speaking to my listeners, they consume my content both in audio and video, depending on their circumstances. That's why I put out audio and video daily, which I think is super smart. One of the things that I have noticed, and a lot of times we think, younger viewers are listening or watching podcasts over on YouTube. If you look at my parents, the thing that they watch the most is YouTube. Like, they are on YouTube all the time. And I've noticed that with other older demographics like myself, that because I think it's so snackable and bingeable, they don't have to watch an entire 2.5 hour movie, or they don't have to watch it, an hour long YouTube, TV show. They really like, okay, how do I make my tomato plants grow better? And I can watch a 15-minute video or a 9-minute video on that. And I think that podcasters a lot, when they hear about, you should put it to video, they're like, that's just for young people. That's not my demographic. I would argue that, no, that's not true, because with the rise of all these video TVs, the Rokus and TiVos and all that my parents are on it all the time, and they're not tech savvy. They're not. They're like, I have to set it up for them. So
well, and what are the chances that your parents finding that video was because they went into Google and they typed in, how do I do X? And then because that segment of that particular video popped up in Google, because ladies and gentlemen, YouTube is owned by Google, pops up, and then boom, they have the exact solution that they were looking for demonstrated on a video. And so when you could do that with your podcast, if somebody's searching for the content that you're providing, like, make it available to them. Mm-hmm. Create a video that is a part of your podcast with a specific timestamp, and Google will find it. You got to give your stuff juice so that your audience can find. How many times have you subscribed to a YouTube channel because you Googled something and you found it and you're like, oh man, I never knew that I needed that specific nut to screw in the bottom of this boom arm for this particular microphone. And who is this person talking? I don't even know. And then you go onto their YouTube channel and you subscribe to their YouTube channel and you're like, oh, they've got an audio podcast and they talk about this too. You go down a little rabbit hole with creators. you can do that. You just have to be able to go and step into the batter's box as it relates to video and start taking swings. And and that doesn't mean you have to show up. And I know I'm jumping ahead here for the in terms
Right.
of the show, but there's some beautiful live streams. We talk, James Hicks is here, Jody Krangle is here, Ask Ralph. These are people that are on video and they understand how to create really great looking video, whether it's with Ecamm or whatever software that they're using. And people are freaking out about it. Like, how can I show up like them? And again, I have to go back to the audio podcasters and go, do you remember when you first started your audio podcast? And you didn't, you popped open your laptop and you used that microphone that's hot garbage, and your spinning ceiling fan, and all of, and so just remember that it's okay. Your first video is not going to be great.
Right.
Because you have your audience that's coming over. You start letting those people know, hey, I just want to let you know I launched a YouTube channel and we're putting content over there. Please join me over here. You have, talk about the greatest marketing thing ever is if you have this existing podcast where you have this community and go, hey, did you know that we have a YouTube channel? And here's what we do. We serve you with this, we serve you with this, we serve you with this. Come on over, subscribe. Let me know that you're there. I'd love to chat with you there. It's also a way to communicate with your community, right? Your audio podcast is, in a lot of ways, it's very difficult to communicate with them. Have them come over to YouTube. You don't have to put the same thing over there, but all of a sudden you're social, right? You're creating this thing over there.
Right.
And it's just, it blows my mind that people are treating this so siloed where they could just go, hey, listen, I can both can promote each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think one of the things I love about the show is the community aspect of it, doing it every Friday and seeing that people show up and new people show up with the guests or whatever. I just love it. And so I'm going to bring up some comments from the amazing Jody Krangle, who was on a couple weeks ago. She goes, yep, it's on demand. YouTube is great for that. And she goes, my parents are on YouTube all the time. So I think that's amazing. And then Kira says, I know people of all ages that stream YouTube on their TVs all the time. It's such a great platform to reach so many. Thank you, Kira. We've talked about YouTube, and Chris, I wanted to ask, and this is kind of a nerdy, question, but do you put your video podcast on Spotify as well, or are there other platforms that you think a video podcast should be on other than YouTube?
I've got a few clients that put their podcasts on Spotify.
Right.
And I think mostly it was because, hey, we're doing a video, we might as well put it there. And, the amount of views there are just, if you can do it and have it not be cumbersome for you to do that. I think you have to have a Spotify for podcasters account. Yeah. Right. So there's that. Now you're going to have 2 RSS feeds. Right. And so you got your video that you're uploading to Spotify. I think I used to feel in a lot of ways, especially for audio podcasts, that you want to be in every phone book. So you want to be you want your audio podcast to just be everywhere. You have a podcast host, whether it's Libsyn or Captivate or Blueberry or Podbean or whatever. There's a bunch of them. A lot of them are great. I use all of them because I have different clients that do. But they have distribution directories. And so, you want to make sure that you're on Apple Podcasts. You want to make sure you're on Spotify. Google Podcast is going away. And so that's, those 2 are going to likely become, going to become larger. But there's a whole distribution platform for audio podcasts that each one of these podcast hosts do. But then there's a whole bunch that aren't really a part of those that you can do a little research and go, oh, I can put my RSS feed here and I can put it here and I can put it here. And it's cool to be everywhere, but the percentages of actual, how many people are listening there are incredibly small. But why not? You never know if somebody's going to find it on, Pod Player X, whatever it is. And so I don't really bother too much with Spotify for video. Again, I've got a couple of clients that want to put their content there, just hoping to get found.
Right.
Type of deal.
They made it a lot easier with that Spotify for podcasters, and I just wanted to mention it because we started doing that. I think I did the last 5 or 6 episodes. There's some downloads, but it's nothing like YouTube or anything like that.
Right.
But I was just playing with it, and it's really easy to upload. So I just was wondering what your thoughts were on that. So yeah, put it everywhere, as I'm kind of where you never know who's going to discover you. Maybe it's the producer of some big show, and they're like, hey, why don't you come on my show and talk about what you talked about? So you never know what might happen.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times you don't, you think no one's watching, and they are.
Right. Very, very true.
Yeah, half the time on Spotify, if it's a video podcast, I'll have it on in my car and I'll walk out and be like, "Oh my God, it's a video! How the hell is that?"
Right.
No, I was just listening to it. It's so funny that you brought up Conan, because I have definitely done that, the Conan effect, right? Where I've watched a couple clips and I'm like, I gotta listen to the audio version to get the full effect, because I love Conan. I've loved him for years. But Chris, I've also done the opposite too. I've listened to an audio first version of Brian Needs a Friend, and there's been a sequence in it where it's like, oh my God, Sona has said, look at your face, why are you so weird, or something. I'm like, I gotta see that.
Right.
I go and I search out that video to hope it's on YouTube. So I've gone both ways with it, which I think is really, really fun. But how can podcasters, nudge people towards their video content if they have a predominantly audio first audience, especially when they're just adding in the YouTube factor? What are some good strategies to kind of nudge them towards the video aspect of it?
Yeah, make it a part of your calls to action on your shows. And so if you're an audio podcaster and you've got your listeners, I think even though we're fans and we mentioned Conan, we mentioned, a bunch of other podcasts that we listen to, you don't listen to every single one of them. So I think there's a couple of things you can do. You can start including it in your somewhat intros. Hey, just want to let you know, we launched a YouTube channel, but make sure you're giving them a reason why they need to go there, right? Because they're like, oh, I've been enjoying this for years. Now you're on YouTube. Why should I go there? And it comes back to the fact of, like, a lot of people will create social media or on multiple platforms, and it's all the same, right?
Yeah.
So don't create the same content on YouTube just with your camera, right? I mean, if that's what you're doing, okay, maybe at a minimum, at least it's there so you can see, like, to your point, hey, Sona said this about his face, and so I want to go and I want to see it. I want to find that. Conan O'Brien's kind of a unicorn in that respect. So the first thing you want to do is just get your audience used to you and just make it a part of your thing. And just, hey, we'd love for you to join us over on YouTube, where we create this for you. And, somehow make it so that it's, you're telling them there's a reason for them going there, because it's a little different, right? It's not, it's a visual experience, it's a more immersive, and we do this, that, and the other over there. Right? Maybe bite-sized morsels for you. If you don't have time for an entire episode, we'll do this, out of the other. So they might go, okay. And you got to say it multiple times before people actually are going, okay, I'm going over here. The other thing you can do is, if you're an audio podcaster, very likely, depending on your podcast host, like I love Captivate as a podcast host. They have this thing called AIMI, which stands for Advertising Insertion something. I don't know the acronym there, but it's a great way to insert quote unquote ads into your podcast. Now, this isn't an ad that someone else has created necessarily. It's a way for you to insert an MP3 into your podcasts at certain moments, including past episodes. So if you want to say, okay, at minute X, or at the very beginning, if you want to do a mid-roll or whatever, I want to insert and do a quick, like, hey, I just want to let you know we launched a YouTube channel, and that could be on episode 1 through 480 or whatever. So that ad is in there, and it's telling people you launched a YouTube channel. And you could do that for any kind of thing for monetization. Hey, if I've got a Patreon channel, or a promotion that's running for the month of September, you can do that. Just remember, after September's over, you got to pull that ad, because people are going to listen to it and go, hey, it's November. What is that ad for? And then people are gone. So I think those are two things you can do, is start getting used to letting your audio podcast listeners know, hey, we're also on YouTube. If you're more comfortable there, we provide content that is like this. And then also create that maybe later in the episode as an ad that you can insert.
That's great. And I wanted to bring up some comments on that. And Jody says this. She goes, I love Captivate. I'm using it now at the beginning of my podcast to insert a call to action right at the start, but to find out more about my audience, not to advertise anything. So those breaks you can do really cool stuff with. And Chris kind of went over it really quick when he said the whoosh, and then have your thing. A lot of people don't know to do that. Like you have a little bit of sonic branding that you put at the beginning or the end of your ad, sometimes both, so it stands apart. It makes that break. But if you do it in actually the ad insert or your call to action insert or whatever you're putting in there, you don't have to put it in the main show. You see what I'm saying? Right. Like it's an insert, and a lot of people don't know that, but it gives you a break. You can sonic brand it. Jody Kringle knows all about that. She is amazing at sonic branding, so make sure you go check out her show because she talks about this all the time. But you can find those little, those little sound effects or whatever that match your branding that you could put in there. But I thought that was really cool and wanted to make sure people knew about that. On that note, Chris, are there any other tools or techniques you recommend to help those audio podcasters produce high quality video without really getting overwhelmed with like the tech to do it?
I just go back to what I'm, as far as tools are concerned, it's your mindset. And just understand, like, you've built an audience already. You're ahead of these folks, and stop getting like the comparison, imposter syndrome, or whatever we're calling it, where you're looking at these gorgeous live streams. But they're right. They just started last month, and as much as you think they know what they're doing, you know far more than them in terms of delivering content to an audience. You're just firing up your camera. You'll get to the point where you figure out what your f-stops and your 4K and your what you need for how to switch a scene in Ecamm and a Stream Deck and all of those things. YouTube is great for learning those things, but you don't got to learn it all at once, and you certainly don't need to wait until you have a glorious looking show like Social Media News Live before you launch a show. Like I said, it's time to step into the batter's box and start taking swings, and get yourself going to get to work on your batting average, to work, and because that's what you did as an audio podcaster. So your mindset needs to be, okay, I'm doing this. I am doing this. Because your audience, this is the other great thing about this audience and this community, Jeff. If you showed up right now and somehow there was an audio, and I think there's been situations where like somebody's doing an echo audio thing, or somebody's camera goes out. These people in the chat, like Rich Graham and others, these will be like, hey, have you checked the flux capacitor? And did you flip the screen? Like, they know this stuff because they're here to help you. And your audience actually loves to do that because you've cultivated this community of people that are here to enjoy, to be educated, to be entertained, and to be part of this community. So as someone who's done that already on audio and is now firing up the video, you have such a huge advantage where you're not doing what do they call it? The zero viewer live streams or whatever they call them, know? It's like, you're not going to do that. When you go live, and you have an existing audience and you've started to let people know you're doing it, the people are going to show up if you've been podcasting. They will. Because
they want to see what you look like when you do podcast. Like it's okay, this will be exciting because I've never seen Chris Stone before live, and this is going to be great. I can't wait to see him.
Oh God, unsubscribe.
One of the things too is like it just takes time to practice, right? Like, some people may not know, but I'm actually sitting here manually switching these things on a huge button Stream Deck. I'm changing the scenes, all this stuff, and I would sit down before my show and practice and practice and practice and practice, and I still screw up, which is it's whatever. I'll put the wrong lower third or something, but that you cannot go out of the gate thinking you're going to do all this switching things without practicing. You've got to do it.
It's to this what you have here. Well, what was on there before is it sets yourself apart. So as going live, this is the other thing. Is like, going to do video is one thing for audio podcasters, but going to do live video for whatever reason, that freaks people out even more. So, sometimes you have to kind of kick that can down the road before you start having conversations with people about doing live video. But I really encourage doing live video. It helped me overcoming, I'm still a recovering perfectionist, but I probably said, and all these things during the course of this show, but I don't care. That's how I talk. And this is who I am. And so you don't want to be in a situation where somebody sees you and they're like, well, this is not the person that I've seen. Right. And
Right.
if you're on a live video, like the people that are here, they trust Jeff C. They trust Connor Brown. They may not necessarily trust me just yet because they're like, who is this idiot in the middle? But this is a live video. It's live, and things are going to happen, and you're just like, whatever. This is me, and
Here we go.
people are still here. Last time I checked.
Yeah. One of the things, Jody Kringle says, so true, happens on Dave's live stream on Saturdays all the time. Things happen. Right. They don't mess up. The screen doesn't work. Dave, but you know what? Dave does use Ecamm, and that's the sponsor of our show as well. And I'll do what Dave does. It's spelled ECAMM because it's good, just like Dave says. So if you go to ecamm.com/Jeff, you can get 15% off if you use Jeff15 as a code on your first purchase. So make sure to check them out. They do make stuff really easy, and you don't have to have really complicated stuff right out of the gate. You can work your way up. The community is amazing over there helping you. Just like this community is great for helping people, their community is amazing as well. So make sure you guys check out my friends over at Ecamm. All right, this last section, this is it. We're going to be talking about overcoming fear of tech. So
yeah, Chris, this is something that you do so well with Dealcasters, helping the people that are content creators or want to be content creators overcome that fear of tech so that they can create content in this digital world that we live in. We all have fear of some sort of technology, even if we are the techie in the family, right? Like my big fear as a content creator is shooting video without using a manual mode. Or I should say without using an automatic. I always shoot an automatic. As I freeze.
You're back.
Oh, you're back.
See, this is what I'm talking about.
Case in point.
That's right.
Case in point. And my big fear with shooting in manual is I'm going to miss whatever shot I was getting or what I wanted to do outside in the world. And that shot's never going to exist ever. So my big thing is what are the most common fears that people have, that content creators have with technology, whatever it is? And I guess guys kind of frame it, in the podcasting, video podcasting space, and how can those content creators overcome these fears?
Stop looking at other stuff and thinking you're supposed to be that. I mean, no matter how much I say it, I do it too. I absolutely do it too. But I think you have to turn that sort of negative comparison kind of syndrome and turn it into actual curiosity. And the beauty of it is at our fingertips, we can find what it is that we need to do. And I always try to keep it simple with everyone, whether it's the clients that I've got or it's the guests that are brought on to client shows. Jeff knows this. It doesn't matter, how high level a person is. Sometimes, it's not a commensurate sort of situation in terms of their virtual presentation. They're showing up in even as I'm freezing on the screen. Okay, I'm back. We see it in broadcasts like, on ESPN and, everything else where people are just showing up in their wine cellars like they're in the witness protection program with an echoey kind of thing. And so if we can just make sure that the person can be clearly understood, and that from an audio perspective, that's the number one thing. Okay. So if they're showing up with AirPods, okay, I immediately know, okay, do we have wired earbuds? And, no matter how much you send to a guest ahead of time, they're not going to read all this stuff. So you got to give them some simple things. And that is make sure that we have some wired headphones. If we don't, okay, let's work with your AirPods. The more you kind of get in the conversation about this tech stuff, the more people get frustrated and the worse content that they will create, the more uncomfortable they are, and the least they're just not going to create stuff. It keeps them from creating stuff. And so I would say you have to start with what you got. If you don't have a high def camera, chances are you've got a phone. You've got a smartphone, you've got an iPhone, and there's great software, whether it's Reincubate's Camo, which I highly recommend, which is very affordable and super easy to use. Turns your iPhone into a 4K possible camera, if that's what your iPhone is. And even if I don't recommend doing the laptop camera or laptop microphone, but if that's all you've got and that's all you can afford, okay, let's try to get it eye level. Let's get your audio, get some fluffy stuff in the room and around you, get in a small space so that you don't sound like you're in an echo chamber. And those things are all free. And I've put on some shows that have gotten thousands and thousands of views. In 15 minutes before we went live, this person's showing up and doesn't even know how to turn on their camera. And we got them going, and we got the show live. And it was like, okay, because a lot of this stuff you think matters enormously, and it doesn't. What matters mostly is that person being comfortable to deliver things, and everyone can actually hear them and understand them clearly.
Yeah, I think that, start where you're at, and you don't have to go like build a big set. Like if you look like, I'm jealous of Chris Stone's set. Look at that. It's just amazing. He's worked hard on that. And you see, he sends off his, when he does his like the photos that you use for promoting his show, when he's on your show or whatever, his headshots, but he's got his whole setup. Like he's in front of like the NASA Space Center, launch center there. But it looks awesome, but you don't have to start that way. Yeah.
It took years.
Like I will make Chris so mad because I started with the Blue Yeti mic. It was the Pro version though. And it did okay it actually plugged into my XLR. So it was that great.
Wow.
And I was just using my laptop thing. So you can start wherever you're at and then slowly build up. You don't have to, spend $1 gazillion. I've seen so many people spend way too much money and then never do a show, or they pod fade after 7 or whatever. So make sure that you do this. Jody,
you guys found your cockpits there, right? So you have spots in where your home office or wherever you're at. This is where you do your shows, and so I encourage people to do that. Like, carve out an area in your home if this is where you're doing it, and say, okay, this is my spot. This is where I'm, and then you can nip and tuck here and nip and tuck here, and let me add light here, and let me add, and eventually you kind of get to the point, and you're not gonna, there's a reason why I have to have all of this, and part of it is because when I'm showing up as a producer to produce other things, I got to look like I know what I'm doing. Right. And so a lot of it has to do with that. And so like, who's going to trust, if it looks like I'm in the witness protection program, you can count the nose hairs because I'm doing this, and there's a spinning ceiling fan and stuff like that. They're like, who is this clown telling me that I should be doing this, that, and the other? And he sounds terrible. Right. So there's a reason why I need to do that, but you're not going to be able to do that overnight. Find a place where you can throw some fluffy stuff, and listen, you don't want to see what's outside of this frame here. I don't know. There may be drawers here on the floor. I don't know. But
I call it for me, it's the cone of cleanliness, right? It's like this, and then everything over here is not good. So the cone of cleanliness is a real thing. But so we even have this, like, what was it? Jim says he's done quite the overhaul. Remember when he had guitars on the wall? Are the guitars on the other side, or where did you hide them?
I've got guitars all over the place because I've moved them out, and then so I've got them like they're in other areas of my basement. I'm probably gonna I might put one up here or there. It became such a topic of conversation that I was like, is this distracting? And so I thought, well, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to brand whatever show I'm on, whatever show I'm producing, and make it, more, let me just kind of not fade into the show, but I don't want to be distracting either. Because I think a lot of times somebody will have a fantastic virtual presentation, and it's just too overwhelming for the show that they're on. And so you want to kind of, you want to fit in the mix. Like, I look like I belong. Well, I don't really. Connor's way too good looking for this show.
I know so, he is. He's like
really making
like
us
the Tom Cruise of live streaming. So and Abby goes, "Does the cone of cleanliness touch the floor?" She's seen it. It's like, yeah, it's not good. So, and Kira says, love me some Blue Yeti. Does anyone remember the snowflake mic? I remember being so excited to get it back in the day.
The snowball?
Yes,
I
the
didn't know there
snowball,
was a
the blue
snowflake.
snowball. Yeah, well, that was for us down south.
The snowball. Wow, that is. If there's a competition for the worst mic ever,
That would be it. Yeah.
up
So
there.
this is a great question. We'll finish with this one because it's from Jody, and she goes, "I'd love to learn more about your lighting, Chris. So can you talk really quickly about your lighting?"
Yeah, I wasn't prepared to do the alternate camera, but
You can just talk. About it. It's a podcast.
it's basically 3 points of light. So I have I've got a large light that is above me that kind of carves me out of the background, and then I've got a key light that's over here and a key light that's over here. And then what I do is I adjust them slightly differently so that there's depth in my wrinkly face. And then I just grab some LED lights that kind of look like this.
Yeah.
And these LED lights, which you can find on dealcasters.shop, will project whatever light, whatever color you want to do on your walls, so that you kind of are you kind of align with the colors of any particular show that you're in. And I know Jody's got some great branding, so she would have it, burgundy and that
So
gold
what kind?
and yeah.
What are your above lights, the key lights and your point lights that you're having on you? Do you know what brand they are off the top of your head?
GVM.
Okay.
They're GVM lighting, which stands for I forget what the acronym is for that.
Good, very
Motor.
Yeah.
Motor. Good, very
all
motors.
right. So we are at the end of the show, Chris. This has been amazing. Thank you for taking all these questions. I think a lot of people who may have struggled with, okay, should I do a video podcast can see the value of it. And if you're just starting out, why not start with video? Once you get everything the way you want it, practice, take your time, go slowly. But there's so much benefit from doing the video forward podcast. So, Chris Stone, tell people everything you got going on, where they can find you, all of the good stuff.
I am at castahead.net, and we produce podcasts for motivated entrepreneurs who want to show. They want to figure out how all this stuff is done. They just want it done for them, and that's what we do for you. castahead.net.
Awesome. That's go check out his new website. Check out his podcast. Check out Dealcasters. All the things Chris Stone has got going on. The amazing, unsinkable Connor Brown. Where can we find out about you, my friend?
Unsinkable. Go to vacationkingdoms.com and you can follow at Vacation Kingdoms across the social medias to learn more about everything that I have going on. Man,
Connor froze. Yeah. See,
my biggest tech fear is Jeff's East Texas Wi-Fi going
that's
out.
That's not me. It is not me.
Me getting blamed for the connect.
It's the heat in Florida hitting everything.
Cut.
No. All right, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you all for your great comments. And we wouldn't be able to do the show without you. Thank you, Kira, Megan, Abby, Gary, everybody who left comments. I'm sorry if I can't get to all your names. You guys are amazing. Thank you to our sponsors over at eCam.com/Jeff. Make sure you guys go check them out. And we will see you next week. Bye, everybody. Have a great one.